The Honorable Prime Minister Silveria Jacobs, in collaboration with Family Affairs and Women's Desk, now presents the panel discussion themed Family at the Core of Society.
Good evening and welcome to the Core Family, the Core of Society panel discussion. I'm Nerissa Eliis-Corneliia, your Mistress of Ceremony for this evening. On behalf of the Honorable Prime Minister and the Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor, Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs, Section Women's Desk, I hereby bid you a warm welcome. Families are essentially the building blocks of our society. Family units serve as a nursery for the citizens of any society. In other words, families are responsible for the development of children into adults, who will later collectively be our society. As such, each of us is influenced and formed by our surroundings. So too is our society. Because society is a larger population, it may be harder to influence and change from singular events, and yet it is a fluid thing that can be influenced for the good or for the bad. Families are so important to society because they are the foundation society is built upon. The values of the families will be reflected in a society at large. Tonight's program consists of several parts. First, the opening ceremony, which is followed by presentations by our expert panelists, moderated by our two moderators, a break, and lastly, an engaging question and answering session. As we commence the official ceremony, I would now like to invite the Secretary General of the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sport, Mrs. Sharmina Powell Richardson, to provide us with an invocation. Please stand.
Let us pray as we invite our Lord through His Holy Spirit to take preeminence in this place this evening during this panel discussion entitled Family at the Core of Society. Just join me as we bow our heads in prayer. Father, we bring before you this panel discussion where we will deliberate the family being the core of this society. This discussion is timely, O God, as today more than ever, families are faced with intense persecution, Lord God. We recognize, O God, that you created the family as the very first institution. Therefore, the family is the foundational unit of society. O Lord, our society needs to model virtues such as sacrifice, patience, humility, Lord God, perseverance, kindness, faithfulness, self-control, Lord God, gentleness, joy, peace. And last, but certainly not the least, O God, it is because of your love you sent your Son, who was the ultimate sacrifice. So certainly, O God, this society needs love. We lift up, O God, those families not only in St. Martin, O God, but around the world who are challenged with poverty, homelessness, hunger, violence, and even war. We ask that you will look upon them and touch the hearts of your people who can go and minister to these families in their desperate need, O Lord, so they will see the love of Christ in action. Father, give them relief and comfort. This evening, O God, allow the strategies to be revealed so we can seek to address the needs of the families in this society which are not met as yet, O Lord. Father, we thank you, O God, for blessing this evening's discussion, and that all that will be said and done will be in honor and will be a blessing. Bless the organizers, O God. Bless the very speakers. Bless the ministers and every person here present, as well as those following by way of media. Father, this we pray in no other name but the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And please join me in saying, Amen.
Families are our most intimate social environment. They are the places where we begin the vital processes of socializing our children. and in partnership with countless others in the community, teaching them how to survive and thrive in the world. I would now like to ask Ms. Chantal Groeneveld George, Department Head of Community Development of the Ministry of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, to give some opening remarks. Mrs. Groeneveld?
Good evening, everyone. It does me great pleasure to stand before you this evening as Department Head of Community Development, Family and Humanitarian Affairs, Section Women's Desk. One of God's greatest gifts and blessings is the family. The family provides the human capital that constitutes society. Hence, the family is indispensable to the continuation of human civilization. In every culture, the family is the center, the foundation, the pillar, and the bedrock, to name a few descriptors of its significance and value. Every individual belongs to a family, and it doesn't have to be blood related. Through the transmission of cultural norms, beliefs, morals, and values, family contributes to shaping of an individual's identity in society, and by extension, the world at large. Given the significance of the family, the United Nations deemed it necessary to focus on emphasizing and raising awareness of issues impacting families and promoting family-centered approach to policy creation. The UN specifically focused on promoting research on families and family policies and developing programs, including programs evaluation and impact assessment, especially in the areas of the development of the positive parenting program and support work-family balance. We at the Ministry of VSA, and with the support of our minister, Mr. Omar Atli, endorse the UN's initiatives because we recognize the significance of families. Therefore, we will continue to create awareness and assist the policy department in the best way possible to create change for families of our beloved Sualiga. We encourage everyone this evening to always find meaningful ways to spend time together with your family. It is impossible to feel love, care, contentment, or happiness without a family. After all, they are the greatest gift that we should always cherish.
Thank you, Mrs. George Groeneveld. Life has changed so much for most of us in the modern world. With the advancement of technology, changing cultural norms, new priorities, and new forms of communication fueled by the internet, it's natural to wonder what the importance of family is. It is a dying institution that has no place in modern life. Or is that so? Well, of course not. Family is just as relevant as ever before. No matter how much life changes in the future, it will probably continue to be needed in one form or another. Our next speaker is our Honorable Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, Mr. Omar Atli.
Family at the core of society. If you allow me, I would like to switch one of the words. Family is the core of society. See, a family can be the difference between being a minister, a prime minister, or, sadly, a convict. A family creates the role model. A family creates the stability. A family is so important to society. It's one of the greatest achievements. When we have accomplishments, I know when I graduated college, the only thing I wanted to see was my family in the crowd cheering me on. That meant more to me than the degree itself. You see, I want to start the discussion. Many people say you can choose your friends, but not your family, because your family you are born with. I dare to say different. Some families we meet along the way. Some families are more families than relatives. So we say we have blood relatives and we have family. To be considered a family member is the greatest honor there can be. I would like to thank the Community Development, Family, Humanitarian Affairs for their tireless work. I would like to thank the Prime Minister for involving us in this project. It means so much to be here. It means a lot. I'm interested. I have to attend a week, but I'm interested. You guys look very interesting, by the way. But I can say this. Throughout this time in government, the calm has become my family. And that means the world to me. So again, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think he wants to be an expert on the panel tonight. Strong families lead to strong communities, and strong communities lead to a strong society. It's a domino effect that starts in the home and extends outward into our communities. When we have strong family support, we are more likely to fill our basic needs. This allows us to be stronger and more productive members for the contribution of society. And I quote, "Families are the core, foundation, pillar, and bedrock of any given society, as the continuity of human civilization is dependent on the family. A family which can include biological parents, extended family, or adopted parents give us our identity and help to shape whom we become by the passing down of cultural norms, beliefs, morals, and values." Quoted from our next speaker, our Honorable Prime Minister, Ms. Silveria Jacobs.
Thank you very much, Nerissa. After saying all that, why should I have to say anything, right? First of all, I want to say thank you to our moderators and, of course, all 7 of our panelists, one even online due to circumstances, who I know would have loved to be here in person, but at least still made the effort. Family. The first concept of, I always feel like dialogue is the start of any great initiative. And we all talk, there's a lot of talk, and Twitter and Facebook and all of the other social media. But I would like to see the talk lead to action. I would like to see the talk involve families, involve professionals who deal with families, and involve government. I would like to know how all of these different stakeholders feel about it, because it's easy for policy workers to sit in a room and create policy, but I feel enough and more can be done to involve the community. As an educator by profession and a mother and a daughter of a strong mother, I think I can attribute my life achievements, my perseverance and dedication to the way I was raised. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, the children or the youth today are X, Y, and Z because parents are working, because parents have a lot of jobs, had to make ends meet. My mother did too. So I believe we need to move away from the excuses and look at what a child seeing a parent work several jobs for your well-being while still teaching you norms and values, the value that has to that child in terms of hard work, dedication, etc. So there's pluses and minuses to all that we experience, but with strong family support, you can overcome hurdles. And like Minister said, sometimes you're born into that family. Sometimes you end up in foster care and find that family. Sometimes a family member takes you in and you find that family. And unfortunately, when none of the above happens, you find that family in the streets. And we face what we face. And the influences of the external world is more and more encroaching on our paradise. And what is prevalent in the world is also prevalent here. So in putting this together, I usually have a women's conference, and the date got messed up with everything else. And it's like, okay, it's too late. Okay, Mother's Day is coming and Father's Day is coming. And Family Day was May 15th. And so regardless of what it was, I would have had to reach out to the Ministry of VSA and get this going. And I must say, together with my staff, the department under Ms. Chantal Groeneveld has been wonderful to work with, and we will continue to do so as we follow up after this panel discussion. For me, the promise is, as Prime Minister, leading by example and expressing the importance of getting this dialogue going. The ministers and I, all of us, we have this relationship, and collaboration is key. So I want to thank the minister for facilitating and encouraging and being here as well, allowing us to have that coordination without interference, even without meddling, without saying what's going on here, without me. You know, that can happen. So it is a great pleasure. I can't wait to hear the introduction of the 7 panelists. As you can see, we ensure to include the youth. I insisted on that, as a matter of fact, having heard the good young lady speak in the past, and feeling that and hearing them in the floor of Parliament saying, we want to be in the space where discussions and decisions are being made. So thank you for being here. I didn't say anything I'd planned to say, but I must say this. We may not always get to choose the family, but we can have influence on any child. And it takes a village to raise a child. And we cannot step away from that responsibility and say, die my child. That's not, it's our child. And something the ambassador to CARICOM from Barbados said yesterday at the book fair as a keynote speaker that hit me hard, hit me in the gut. And it's that as a society, we have to decide what is important. And we cannot continue to say the youth and family are important and not put in the work. But I believe it requires all of us. And so I'm hoping that with this start, that we can get to the goal of making St. Martin the strong society it is by investing in our youth, by investing in our families, and ensuring that they can feel as part of our community. Tangible, dedicated, committed, and productive members in making our society what it needs to be. Let's get it going.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We've come to the end of the official ceremony, and we'll go straight into the panel discussion, because I think everyone's ready for that. As advertised and alluded to in the synopsis of the program, the panel discussion will be moderated by our 2 esteemed moderators this evening, namely Dr. Rolinda Carter and Mr. Rolando Tobias. Dr. Rolinda Carter was born and raised on the beautiful island of Saint Martin. As a blood research scientist and the Dean of Academics at the University of St. Martin, Dr. Carter remains a strong proponent of knowledge translation. Over the years, Dr. Carter has been awarded and publicly acknowledged as an effective mentor, leader, and communicator. She is a past member and past executive board member of Toastmaster of Today in Vancouver, Canada. In recent years, Dr. Carter has served as a debate judge, writer, editor, team leader, and advisor, and keynote speaker for a wide range of events. As a Center for the Integration of Research, Teaching and Learning Associate, Dr. Carter is certified in identifying and implementing research-based best practices to maximize learning. Dr. Carter holds an Associate of Arts in General Liberal Arts from the University of St. Martin, a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and thank you. I'm Dutch speaking. Biology with a specialization in health sciences from Trent University in Canada, and a doctorate in pathology and laboratory medicine with a certification in laboratory quality management from the University of British Columbia in Canada. When she's not volunteering or working, Dr. Carter enjoys relaxing in nature, exploring new cuisines, and spending quality time with family and friends. Dr. Rolinda Carter. And our next moderator is no stranger to us. Distinguished Toastmaster Rolando Tobias, a graduate in business management, has been involved in Toastmasters, the world's leading communication and leadership organization, for the past 27 years. He has been working at the Windward Islands Bank for the past 30 years and presently holds the position of Assistant to the General Managing Director, Retail. Over 25 years, he has functioned as moderator in various capacities, including moderator for many radio, television, and public debates, including interscholastic high school debates and political debates. In addition to these, he is very active in various aspects, including radio, television personality and program host, MC, motivational speaker, and professional development trainer. He is a strong proponent of personal and professional development and feels that the best way to empower is through the sharing of knowledge and experience. His leadership skills have been proven over the years, and he is often sought after to give keynote addresses, lectures, and trainings on communication and leadership. Mr. Rolando Tobias. My role as MC is going on pause for just a few, as I'll be turning over the floor to our esteemed moderators who will be handling the panel discussion, and then we'll go into a wonderful question and answer session. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Madam Mistress of Ceremonies, for this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening, and we're looking forward to a very interesting discussion. Family, the core of society. We've gathered a great group of panelists, and we're gonna source their knowledge this evening, and I'm sure that as a result of what they share with you, the government is going to be making some great policy changes as well where it comes to the area of family and policy development. We're going to begin with our first panelist for this evening, Cassandra Richardson. And first of all, let me say good evening to my co-moderator, Dr. Carter. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
And you're going to start with the
I'll start with
presenter.
the first panelist. So there's two things I wanted to mention quickly from the introduction that we heard. And we're reminded that family impacts one life journey and inadvertently the person's ability to impact society. What we've also heard is the importance of listening to those who are directly impacted when making decisions. So we look forward to the discussions to come. Our first speaker will be Cassandra Richardson. Cassandra is passionate about social justice issues, a community developer, and mobilizer in her own right, and a lover of humanity. She built most of her academic and working career in the United States and Canada, respectively. She holds a bachelor's degree, double majoring in communications with an emphasis in journalism and environmental science from the University of St. Catherine in St. Paul's, Minnesota, and holds 2 master's degrees, one in social work and another in communication and social justice, both from the University of Windsor in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. While in Canada, she fortified her social work career and passion for social justice work and was hired at a center working with and for immigrant women and their families. After working her way up, she became the program manager of 3 social programs at the center, of which she built 2 from scratch. The Unique Immigrant and Refugee Arts Program, Newcomer Art Program, Project Program, utilized the power of the expensive art to build confidence and self-esteem among immigrant and refugee youth, while simultaneously building empathy and understanding for the immigrant and refugee experience among the local community. The program addressed discrimination that the youth experienced in the community and was a cornerstone of building Canadian citizenry among the youth. She designed and established an immigrant, migrant worker, and refugee mental wellness program in Windsor, the first in southwestern Ontario. After leaving her almost 11-year career in Canada, Ms. Richardson was finally ready to move back home to be with her family and was appointed Executive Director of the Safe Haven Foundation, a shelter for women experiencing intimate partner violence. In her capacity working for Safe Haven Foundation, she fulfilled roles as executive director, implementing the wider vision of the foundation, providing counseling and therapy to women and their families that were victimized by domestic violence. She became an educator, activist, and advocate for her St. Martin community for gender equality, children and youth rights, accessibility for immigrant and displaced persons, and a proponent for mental wellness and mental wellness projects in her St. Martin community. She spends some of her time working in community development and assisting NGOs and NPOs to increase and strengthen their organizational capacity, and still dedicates her time working with and advocating for victims of violence. She consults part-time for various government departments and civic service organizations on social programs. She was appointed to a pioneer role with the Dutch Kingdom to investigate the feasibility of establishing an inter-islands sheltering framework for seriously threatened victims of domestic violence. She is a TED Talk presenter on art and community mobilization. She has been invited on neighboring islands and internationally to speak about her experiences and expertise in working with vulnerable persons and against violence. In her downtime, she takes much pleasure and serenity being in the company of good friends and family, and is a fervent percussionist of the djembe drum. Miss Cassandra Richardson.
So I usually want to save tears until the end, but just hearing from the Prime Minister and the Minister and Ms. Groeneveld and everyone about family kind of pulled at my heartstrings, particularly as we're talking about family not being only just blood related. Because a lot of my work that I have done is either with the disruption of families and toxic relationships between families, and then vulnerable people trying to find their own ground in trying to make and develop family. So a lot of my work is already done by those presenters already mentioning that. So the benefits of family, we spoke about how family prepares us for community, and it's pretty much the cornerstone. But we have limitations, and probably not this audience, as I'm hearing about family being only blood related, particularly in this day and age. We have global migration, whether it's forced or not, various groups that advocate for access to resources and supports to just be simply seen as human. So certain groups include refugee immigrants, gay, lesbian, transgender, transsexual persons, children, women, religious minorities, and underserved populations, so persons not being able to have access financially or materially to things. What do they do then when blood family systems have been broken or disrupted, or even maintaining those bloodlines would be considered detrimental to their physical and psychological well-being? So we're forced perhaps to broaden our perspective and use the benefits of a strong and healthy family structure and transcend these to another way of thinking about family. And then we think about community, and then we think about society. So while I'm presenting, I'd like to keep that in mind. Think about those important elements that are the cornerstones of family: connection, inclusion, sharing, commonality, supporting, understanding, compassion, empathy, and love, really. So a bit of self-disclosure. So I left the island in 1996. 1995 was a blur. Anybody remember 1995? Everybody remember, not you though. The younger ones don't remember 1995. But 1995 was quite a blur for many months for us that were, well, for everyone. But we were totally disrupted when we were in school. We didn't know. When we were supposed to be going back to school, where the electricity was coming from, many of us had no roofs. So in 1996, I was able to leave, and I also had the immigrant experience. Even though perhaps my supports were a little bit much, right? Considering if we compare it to an immigrant society where the resources aren't that much. But I also struggled with language acquisition. So although I went to an English-speaking country, my education, where I was taught Dutch, but didn't speak it at home, I thought that I was great in speaking English. My father was an editor of a newspaper. I was so eloquent. And then I got to school, and then I was rudely awakened. So I had to also take ESL classes. It was not fun, as people started looking at you as lesser than, right? Also dealt with some of the prejudices. I didn't know when I went to the US that I was actually Black, quite different. And not having family and finding community and making my own community. So what I recognized personally and focused on both academically and career-wise was about building inclusive communities. So through my college career, whether it was bachelor's or master's, this is where the impetus came from for me to build communities. I learned that connection is a two-way street, it's dynamic, and that the best case scenario is when that dynamic relationship or that connection is positive, when it's encouraging, when it's supportive, it's respectful, it's inclusive, it's loving. Just the way we idealize and imagine a family structure should be. The way we want it to be, and we all know that healthy family structures aren't the case for many, or at least for some. And as leaders in our community, if we recognize and truly value that a healthy family structure, in whatever form family is packaged, is the core of society, what would be the harm in structuring our systems to mimic or to take on a more healthy family approach? Using the healthy family structure as a basis form of community, we developed a program when I moved to Canada, and it was called the NAP program. It involved initiating an arts program for refugees and immigrant youth. The majority of these youth would be considered first-generation Canadians, and I say the majority of them. Some were still awaiting word from Citizenship and Immigration Canada to hear back about their status. These were the kids that were in limbo. We could imagine that particularly these kids felt unstable, insecure, and maybe unwanted. Some of these kids, 15, 16, 17, they came to Canada without their parents because they were forced to leave their home because of war, an event that happened not as a result of their own doing, but because governments were angry at one another and they suffered the consequences. Benny spoke about seeing family members lose their lives in front of them in horrific ways and explained it as just a regular Tuesday. Many kids that attended struggled with the language, reported feeling marginalized, discriminated against, and one even said she felt like she was less than human. These were all experienced in larger society. So for these young people, larger society meant by teachers, going to the grocery store, going to the government administration departments when they acted as interpreters for their parents or older family members, and walking down the street, just going to the park. Being treated as a second-class citizen or an outcast in your family has interestingly detrimental effects on a person. Some could argue that just because one is mistreated in a family or society, we should be able to brush it off, not take it on, know right from wrong, turn the other cheek, and act in a positive way. Well, not to say that this may be untrue, but as a practitioner and a scholar of human behavior, I would argue that there are elements that need to be considered and that it's complicated. The research will show that if negative influences are experienced at different levels of the lifespan in your interpersonal relationships, community structures, and larger societal systems, targeted persons or persons who are victimized, so they are shunned, they are discriminated against by being denied access, bullied, made fun of, etc., etc., many times respond in adverse ways. So, ways that are harmful to their development, and by extension, this contributes or impacts your larger society negatively. These people struggle with their interpersonal relationships at home. They struggle in school and express themselves with anger, sadness, defensiveness, and insecurity. So yes, family is the core of society. So now that we know, what type of society do we envision being? Let's go back to the arts program. That was carried out in the little town of Windsor. The NAP Project, Citizenship and Immigration Canada, they had a lot of money to throw at the issue. And they were open to experimenting with a program design. So, of course, I encouraged the team to take advantage of this. We imagined designing a program, and you'll see them on screen. This was the play that they did, and it also turned into a movie. So it was fun, it was creative, and that it encompassed the best parts of family. So it was a whole program, not just a project. We made sure that the space was inclusive, it was supportive. We even sat together, my team and I, and sometimes with 24 to 40 teenage kids, and had a hot lunch prepared by our staff along with the kids. We provided homework support that was ESL focused and worked on dynamic art projects that would be later presented in the community. The idea of this presentation, however, was a bit sensitive. The kids wanted their stories to be told because they thought in some way this would make them not feel so separate from their host community. And what made it so sensitive was that this would mean that the host community, individuals, and as well as the systems, would be faced with their involvement in making these kids feel unwelcomed or less than. Next slide, please. Sorry. One project in particular, the last one of the program, undertook a couple years before I returned home, was an expressive arts project that included drama and dance and visual arts. And the goal of the project was that the participants would feel empowered and confident in life, and they would go on to be ministers and prime ministers, I know a tall order. But part of that goal was also that the host community, by way of this artistic presentation, would have an attitude change about how they viewed immigrant and refugee youth. It was a very involved project. So it wasn't just about writing the script and having the kids show up to run lines and practice. There was a sensitive process we used to extract the stories from the youth, where we were mindful about how triggering this could be for some of our kids. Talking about traumatic experiences puts us back in the past, like if we are right there. So we had trained social workers and other mental health professionals as part of the team when the focus groups were held and stories and experiences were discussed. We cried a lot, we got angry a lot, and most importantly, we supported and loved up on one another a lot. White, Black, Muslim, atheists, Christians, straight, gay, young women, young men, girls, boys, and adults were all there to support the most vulnerable. Just like what we imagined a healthy, loving, supportive family structures allows for. These kids at the end were so tight, they broke some of their own prejudices they had against one another. Many were Muslim, and some were Christians from the same region of the world. And because of that experience of telling the stories in a raw and honest way, it brought them closer because they empathized with one another's struggle. The very flamboyant and openly male gay drama director was respected as a teacher and a facilitator, helping these young, courageous people express and tell and dance their stories on a stage for all to see. Next slide, please. These youth performed 7 shows in that little town and held a talk back afterwards where they encouraged questions from the audience about their life before, what it was like living now there in Windsor, and the hopes, dreams, and fears they had for the future. At the end, not only were these kids transformed, but they initiated important conversations that held within the hope of change for community to be more accepting and compassionate and to do things a little bit more differently, with kindness and love, even at a systemic level. Thank you.
That was Cassandra Richardson, and a very interesting story. If you realize, I took a while there because I was reflecting on everything that she said. And what a beautiful way to demonstrate the importance of, as the minister said, family is not always blood related, but it can be created if it's done the right way. Thank you very much, Ms. Richardson, for that very interesting presentation. Let's give her another round of applause. Our second presenter this evening is Mrs. Rose Pooran Fleming. She's a senior policy advisor within the Department of Education. Mrs. Pooran Fleming holds a master's degree and has more than a decade of experience working within the policy realm of the government of St. Martin. During her tenure, Rose, as she prefers to be called, has successfully written policies that affect the lives of many persons over various age categories, practically from the cradle to the grave. However, she is most proud of her work to protect children and their families, especially those children that are marginalized and abused. This she does through her continuous efforts in child protection and strong involvement in all initiatives that curb violence and treats its effects, not only for the victims, but also for the perpetrators. You see, it is Rose's strong belief that the road to tomorrow's future is only bright when the children and youth along that road function well through nurture, safety, and equal opportunities, thus giving them every chance to take control of their own growth and development in positive ways. In turn, breaking that cycle of perpetual violence and replacing it with an enabling environment that is fair and vibrant to all. Let us now hear from Mrs. Rose Pooran Fleming.
Thank you, moderator, for the introduction, and thank you, Cassandra, for the presentation before me. It really woke up some of the emotions, and basically even though my presentation has a lot to do with child abuse and that abuse within a family, within one home, what it sings true to is all of the emotions that go along with it. And I looked at those emotions from a negative place, and I'm glad that you were able to actually highlight some of those emotions when they come from a positive place. Nerissa, my presentation is child abuse and how it affects a family, and the name will resonate in my slides. I've started with child abuse, the definition that we use from government. You can have a read at it and recognize that it's no different from any child abuse definition used all over the world or in any agency that is there to protect children. It sings true of threatening, violent interaction, either physical, psychological, of sexual nature, that a parent or other person from whom a minor is in a relationship of dependence actively or passively imposes on that particular minor. Can you imagine you're a child? Can you imagine you are literally hoping that the persons that you are in the care of will do the best for you? Can you imagine the terror when they don't? That is a definition we use to display child abuse on St. Martin, because that is a definition that rings true for the children that live that experience. We've also attached neglect, child marriage, child labor, child sex trafficking, and child soldiers to the category of child abuse. Nerissa? On St. Martin, we recognize that child abuse comes in many levels. Oftentimes we hear a person say, okay, well, my mom hit me and I'm fine. I may even be the Prime Minister. However, it is important to notice that child abuse does come in levels. And sometimes we perpetrate as well. We're not perfect. We're human. We have mild violence that is characterized by intimidation, talking down, demeaning, shouting, and screaming. We have moderate violence that is threatening, trickery, bribery, degradation, pushing, shoving, assault, indecent exposure, grooming, all of the things that we say as a society, no, this is when you go too far. You can scream, but who says that you can exploit? Who says that you can take away valuables or defame property or even the person? But then it even goes worse. We have those categories of severe violence, rape, molestation, pornography, force, trafficking, beating that leaves scars, broken bones, broken people, broken children. And this is why we pay so close attention to what the levels of abuse are and how a child or children experience those levels on St. Martin. Though I've mentioned to you the three categories, the severity categories, there is one thing that rings true in all three. They're emotions. And these emotions, whether that abuse is mild or if it's moderate or severe, they're there. There's sadness, there's anger, fear, loneliness, embarrassment, personal disdain. We are grown-ups, and it's difficult for us to emulate those terrible emotions, negative emotions, feeling rejected and forsaken, provoked, discouraged, small, sorrowful. And yet, we have children that live this. They experience this on our island. And this is why we have to work tirelessly, because these are emotions that you do not want living a life in your society. These are emotions that you want to stamp out at every possible turn in a child's life. Nerissa? And there's a reason for it. It comes down to the attachment. And I listened to Cassandra, and she talked about immigrant children, and she talked about white, black, Christian, Muslim, everyone in one mix, a big salad bowl. But there's one thing that they had at the end, and that was secure attachment. They found love with each other, togetherness, belongingness. When we damage our children end up with an attachment that is fearful, avoidant attachment. You depend on someone, and it scares you to death that you depend on that person. So you do whatever you can to try not to get on that person's wrong side. And trust you me, sometimes doing whatever you can is the perfectionist behavior. It is making sure I bring home that 10. It's making sure that, if the dishes are supposed to be washed by 5 o'clock, that at 4:59, the entire sink is dried and everything is turned down and packed away. It's not only the child that is hiding in the corner trying to be as invisible as possible. So when we look at children that are on the edge, it's not only those that are doing the things that shows, it's also sometimes those that are doing the things that are great, but they're on the edge. They're afraid. They're suffering from avoidant attachment. So yes, we look at signs. They're afraid of their caregiver. And yet, when the caregiver is there, they're happy. They're pretending. But they're close to tears. They're close to tears. They need that person just as much as they need them to go away. And this is how we ourselves have to view some of these experiences that our children have. And this is why we have services, because these are some of the situations that we want to stamp out. And yes, I do. I think about it and I'm thinking that mother and that father, that's a monster. You have a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old hiding from you when they should be jumping in your lap and talking to you about what happened in school today and everything, and it goes on, and you should be happy and smiling. Yeah, they're monsters. But there's something that is sad, because those monsters themselves have been abused. That monster itself is traumatized. They too either tried to be the perfectionist or tried to become invisible. And that is the perpetual cycle of child abuse. And that is why we need to treat the victim and we need to treat the perpetrator. Because this is the only way we will heal our families. This is how we will get secure attachment for our families. This is the road to success, where everyone walking the road feels meaningful and have self-actualized. My final slide is just a statement. Justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. Stop child abuse. Thank you.
Thank you. A very, very powerful statement and presentation on what happens when our view of family is disrupted through abuse. Very powerful. Thank you. Our next speakers are team, husband and wife. Mrs. Shanella Romney James and Mr. Raymond Romney. Mrs. Shanella Romney James was born in 1980 on the beautiful Swaliga, St. Martin, married to Mr. Raymond Romney for almost 18 years now. Congratulations. A mother of 3 children, 1 beautiful girl, Renella, 16, and 2 handsome boys, Shamar, 13, and Simeon, 11. She is an elementary school teacher of Group 8 and Cycle 2 coordinator at a Hillside Christian School campus. Singing is her passion and calling as well. She is currently a praise team leader as well as a director of the Youth Adult Choir of the Phillipsburg Methodist Church. She is also a member of a popular gospel group on the St. Martin, the Harmonics Band, as well as the new upcoming gospel group, Elysian. Mrs. Shanella Romney James. Her husband, Mr. Raymond Romney, studied construction and architectural engineering at MTS in Aruba, then went on to further his studies in the Netherlands at the University of Wolverhampton in the UK. He is an educator by profession. After completing his studies in 2002, he worked in the Netherlands, first in the private sector for the company Philips for about a year before moving over to teaching. He worked at different schools in the Netherlands as technique was a new subject at the time and there was no teachers for that subject. In 2004, he got a full-time teaching job at the school where the subject technique was not doing well. Within a year, he turned things around. Things got turned around because of the way the subject was taught to the students, giving the students the opportunity to grow their creativity. The school also took part in the famous First Lego League competition that is held every school year. This was a competition about robotics. The school was known for winning this competition every year in this district under his guidance. He also won Teacher of the Year in 2004. He returned to St. Martin in 2007 as the subject technique was also new in St. Martin. He taught the subject technique in IT at MPC. The same talent and the way the subject was given drew many students to choose the subject. The subject technique started doing very well at MPC as the classes grew from one group of 8 students to 4 groups of 20 students per group. His goal is to show students they can do anything once they put their mind to it and are willing to put in the work. He also believes that our students here in St. Martin are just as good and talented or even better than any other students from around the world. With proper guidance, our students can and will be the best. In 2012, he got the opportunity to move up in a managerial position as a coordinator of the pre-exam and exam classes, acting department head of the VSBO-TKL. From 2021 to present, he holds the position of department head of VSBO-TKL and CXC department at MPC. Mr. and Mrs. Romney.
All right. As a teacher at heart, we decided we're going to sit right here. Because then I have a whole classroom going on here and, we don't have much time. So we decided to sit here and present. We did have slides, but we didn't know how it would have been projected. So we decided to just read from here. Yes? All right. Now, honestly, we were halfway prepared because others had to be in our place. So we tried to put together as much as possible what we understood from what the panelists wanted us to bring forth. Now, family at the core of society. And when I listened to the minister again reiterate what he said, family is the core of society. The role of family in society is essentially to teach children skills, morals, and values that will help them become better people and will in turn allow them to be productive in society. The foundation of society is the family. Norms, values, and characters are molded and developed within the family in order for them to function in society. Family structures and values are largely shaped by the broader community and even by state, region, or country in which a family is located. We all come from different backgrounds. Caribbean islands, and our forefathers brought their own values and norms that they learned from their families to our families. You know, now in the past, we had our grandparents who traveled from different places to different Caribbean islands. And of course, they had their families were really huge. We know 10 children and all of that. So my husband would then reveal how it was with the types of families that we had in the Caribbean times back in the days. In the past, there were more parents at home who would be able to mold and teach our children values. But there were those who worked as well. But there was always someone there, someone at home to take care of the children. They worked, but there was still enough time to spend with their family to mold them and to take care of them. Technology was at a low level or non-existent during that time. Watching TV had a time limit. And some didn't even have television. So there was nothing to distract them from doing what they had to do. Every afternoon, as I think back, my grandmother would tell us we had to take a nap. After we come from school, we would have our lunch and we had to take a nap because that helps us to relax and be ready to start any chore or whatever she wanted us to do after that. It takes a village to raise a child. And we heard that when I look back in the past, that was very dominant. Children would play outside, not only with their family, but also with neighbors and the entire community. We would jump rope, we would play jumping jacks, we would do lake hide and seek, hopscotch, play baseball, etc. I could name all of those things that we used to do outside. And what did that do for our community? We interacted with each other. We learned from each other. We worked together. We communicated with each other. And we built bonds with each other. We created families in the community. If one child gets out of hand, the neighbor will reprimand you and discipline you. And when your parents get home, that's another discipline happening again. And it wasn't an issue because the village raised the child. They were considered the family. Everyone pitched in. Everyone took up that role to raise that child. They kept most of them away from crime, away from loitering. They always had something to keep them busy. And even those who went to school, if your parents didn't know an ounce of Dutch, they would find somebody to teach you that language. They would make it possible so that you can get an education. No matter how hard it was, no matter if they didn't have the means and norms, somebody in society would have helped to build and lift them up and help them to get that education. And that was considered also a family. On the contrary, as we look at the past and now, it has diminished. It has become less. We as a people have become so caught up in ourselves, with ourselves, that we forget about everyone around us. I could recall during Hurricane Irma, when we came out, we didn't even know the neighbors. But when Irma came and we saw the devastation, we got to know our neighbors. They became our family. We always now look out for each other because if anything happens with one of the children, we go over and check up on them. That's how we do in our community. And I know for sure, for a fact, that at that time, St. Martin became that loving community, that family that took care of each other. If you wanted a bag of sugar, I didn't have none, I would share with you. But I see now things have gotten back to normal, and we have forgotten what it is to be a family. Now I'm going to move over to my husband. He will tell you a little bit about the types of family that you have here in our community.
Good evening, everyone. Actually, my wife said everything. She kind of just leave a little piece for me, but I'll make the best of it. Type of family, the types of family that we encounter here and even, worldwide, or for instance, you would have a single parent family. You also will have nuclear family where you have both parents, mom and dad. Now, let me just go back to the single parent family. The reason why I'm going back there is because, it comes back to my experience also. Started out nuclear family, so mom and dad. So, of course, I felt equal like everyone else in the community who was living, in the area like I did. Problem was things for some reason did not work out. So what happened, you had then my mom, left alone to raise 5 boys. Now, of course, that do something to you as a child, because first, you was equal. And all of a sudden now, I don't have daddy, so only mommy. So what happened is I went from being equal and start to think that I'm less. Now, goes back to how my mom struggled. It worked on me because I always thought that, she's mommy, but what happened to daddy? She would teach me, the life skills, but you was missing that strictness, if you do something bad and mommy said, don't do that, we have the tendency of brushing it off. If daddy said, don't do it, a whole different effect. So that part I was missing. And then to hear your friends, talk about, family, everything is family, they go here with the family, mommy and daddy. I did not have that. So it do something to me as a child. And today, you can see that still happening. The reason why I say that is, I'm an educator in profession, and I have to deal with a lot of students in school. And many of them come from broken family. Again, it's not their fault. The same skills and value are lacking by some of the students. Now, how do we now fix that? Because what happened is, if you come from a broken family, you might think this is normal. So what's going to happen? The child going to grow up and think that, hey, this is normal, a single, parent. So that's how that's going to continue. So you have to try to break that cycle. And we have to start looking back at, in society and say, hey, what can we do to help this family stay together? Because honestly speaking, when you speak to some of the parents who are single, they don't know how. They inherit it from their parents. So you see what's happening, because they inherit that from their parents. Their children now are going to do the same thing. So and I'm going to say, when I say we, I also feel that I'm government also, because, I vote, so I am government. All of us are government. So we have to do something, to help our family, to help the family, to help them learn how to be a family. That something was lacking. We have to get that back. One of the biggest things that is happening today, and we got to be very careful with it. And the reason why I'm saying this too, because this also contributes to this single parent, children feeling less than others. You see this gated community thing that we're doing? We need to be very careful with that. We need to be very careful with that, because you have other people, children feeling less. If I'm not in a gated community, I'm less than them. Children who play inside the gated community do not play with the ones outside. The ones outside are afraid to come inside, or they can't come inside because you have to do with codes. And you see what we are doing? We are separating. We have to fix that. We got to be very careful with this gated community. Again, I'm not saying that as parents, as family, you're not entitled to, I want to be safe. I want to be, in a safe environment. But we have to be careful of what we're doing. Now, as I grew up, I must say my mom did a great job. It put me to think different when it comes to females. I always look at mom and females as equal as male. And before that, when I had dad and mom together, you will always think that the male figure is more dominant. What he says goes. What mommy says, yeah, not that it don't go, it's just that it don't carry much weight. Yes, as when daddy says something. However, as a single parent, mommy had to be mommy and daddy. So you get a whole different effect. Like I said, we got to try to, prevent that from happening. We have to prevent these things from happening because it trickled back down to, our children. The nuclear family, both mom and dad, once they are present, children are taught, appropriate behavior, social norms and etiquettes, and they begin to interact with their surroundings in society. Now, with a single parent, that is less. So what I'm trying to say is, what can we do to prevent this from happening? Educate. We have to educate our population. We have to. Those who we have the both family, keep educating them to keep that way. The single family, you can't exclude them. It's not their fault, but we have to provide the tools so that they can help their children later on, so that you break that cycle. So I'm gonna give the word back over to my wife, because, like I said, I had to stretch my little part. So I'll give the word back over to her so she can finish up.
All right, when we go back to the nuclear family, I was brought up in a whole different environment than him. He was with single parent, and I was with a mother and father. And that didn't last either, because for years they have been with each other. You see, mother and father, and my father was the one who would work. My mother worked too. Okay, both of them. But you had that balance of him being the disciplinary, and my mom was also the disciplinary, because she would give you the look in your straight. That was balance for them. And when he talked about single parenting, we have some wonderful single parents. They came from a home where both mother and father was there. And I think fathers need to step up to the plate, because you have to remember that you created a family. When you give of yourself, you didn't think that something else was going to come out. There was a child, and that child is created in a family. It's a family, okay? So mother, father, and child is a family. You need to step up to the plate and stop leaving the mother there on her own to do both roles. It is not fair. So when you do, whether it's by Janice, Judy, and Joda, you got to take care of all of them, because you put yourself in that position, and that is your family, because they're looking up to you. And you don't want it that when they now get their family, that they do the same thing that you did. So all in all, and also for the women as well. Even though he has done all of that, still know that he needs to take care of his child, so don't belittle him. Let him do what he has to do as a father as well. So, in conclusion, I would like to say is that society cannot function without family. It cannot. We are the foundation of a society. Those two don't work without each other. So again, I'm asking us as a community to come back together, to share ideas with each other. We know how a family is supposed to be. We know families of the past, we know families of the present. We need to come together as a community and work together as a family, whether you're blood relatives, whether you're down the block, whether my colleagues, they help me. Things that they experience with their family, they share with me, okay, this is what you should do, or this is not working, oh, my daughter is doing this. We share with each other. So wherever you are, in your workplace, wherever you are, share things of how you can help each other build a family. And in turn, our society will be a good society. Positiveness, because it has to be positive, because we can be negative too, we can have negative families, but we don't want that. We want positiveness, to go back to the way St. Martin used to be, where we helped each other out, where the village raised the child. So family, society, they go together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was the Rumbley family, Mr. and Mrs. Rumbley and Romney, yes. And I was very happy when you said you're going to give the last word back to your wife. It's the best thing you said for the night. Let's give them another round of applause for a great presentation. Thank you very much. Moving right along, our next presenter is Ms. Zoya Hyman. You brought your fan club with you? Family, there you go, good. Zoya Hyman, born and raised on St. Martin, has a passion for people, advocacy, and community outreach. She pursued her passion and earned a bachelor's in psychology and a master's in forensic mental health counseling. She provides treatment for stress, depression, anxiety, mood, and personality disorders. She is also a certified trauma specialist, and she facilitates group therapy for survivors of sexual abuse, which is a program that's run twice a year. With her forensic specialization, she also provides treatment to those involved in the justice system for both offenders as well as victims. And as a way to give back to her community, she launched a social media platform entitled Therapist Talks, where she raises awareness and offers resources for mental health care. Ms. Hyman believes that if we harness the courage to take care of our mental health, we can become a collectively healthy people. Let's now hear from Ms. Zoya Hyman.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to stay up here too, okay? Yes. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, Ms. Grunewald. Ministers, thank you for having me. And tonight we're going to talk about family at the core of society. And I'm going to have a specific focus on parental burnout, okay? And so the contents of tonight, we're gonna discuss the definition and the functions of the family, threats to the family, which is parental burnout, strategies that we can use to strengthen the family, and then at the end, we'll kind of run through a small assessment that we can use. So the definition of family, according to Alan John Bernard, family is a group of people united by the ties of marriage, blood, or adoption, interacting with each other in their respective social positions, spouses, husband and wife and wife, husband and husband, you know how it goes, parents, children, and siblings. I did have an additional bullet point here that today in society, we do see a more fluid definition of family, which is bonded more so by love, trust, and loyalty. Next slide. And the functions of our family, I have 3 here. We have the first function being to provide the basic safety, emotional, psychological needs to the members of the family. And those needs include food, shelter, financial security, love, belonging, warmth, self-esteem, all of the good things. And so you want to ensure that these needs are met to fulfill the well-being. My co-panelists mentioned self-actualizing. When all of our needs are met, we become just more happy, content people. The second function of family is to socialize its members, starting from childhood and growing into adulthood and older age. And socialization is instilling social values and ideologies of society. And we see here that it can be both positive and negative. We can socialize our families to value love, trust, and loyalty, or we can socialize our families to not respect leaders, not respect authority. You know, we see a lot of disdain for the system, you know, that's part of social ideologies. The other part of socialization is the more personal values and character that the family instills in the children. And our third function is that if we have a healthy family, we have a healthy society. And there are environmental stressors that can pose a threat to these functions. And tonight we're going to talk about one of those stressors, which is parental burnout. So parental burnout is the feeling of emotional exhaustion. You're tired of everybody. Don't talk to me. Just leave me alone. Feeling very overwhelmed. You have a lot of feelings going on in your system, and it's too much to handle. Decrease in self-fulfillment or parental fulfillment. You're not feeling good about your life. It's like, what sense does it make? You feel it's a sense of hopelessness almost. Sleep disturbances, whether you're sleeping too much, too little, or you're asleep but you're not rested, or you're constantly waking up. Increased irritability, again, leave me alone, don't talk to me, you're snapping, you have a lot of negative energy in your body. Increased detachment from children as an escape. You love your kids, but you don't want to be around them. You hide in the bathroom, in the closets, you put them on their iPads, let the TV take care of you, leave, you know? The love is there, but the attachment isn't. And we heard about secure attachments, avoidant and fearful attachments earlier. The last one is increased shame and guilt about parenting. So if a parent is experiencing all of these symptoms, but they really do want to be a good parent, they really do love their kids, and they want to have a healthy sense of family, but for some way or the other, they're just not able to fulfill that, we get shame and guilt, and also people watching you. But why your child dressed like that? Why do you not have your children coming with apples and strawberries to school? Why only club social? So, like, again, not being able to fulfill the certain expectations, that can create a lot of shame and guilt, and that's real stuff. Okay? Let's go to the next slide, please. And so, what is the cause of parental burnout? Burnout, according to Roskam in her article in 2018, burnout is the result of too much stress and the absence of resources to cope with it. And here I want to put in that resources can be physical, financial, emotional, all of the above pertaining to the needs that we have, okay? Next slide. The outcomes of parental burnout, we have that there are going to be strained relationships within the family. If everybody is exhausted, or the primary caregivers, the parents, are exhausted, it's creating a lot of irritability, it's declining communication, nobody is happy, you're snapping at one another, it's straining the relationships, and it's creating that sense of detachment. More aggression is expressed in interactions, again, because of a buildup of negative energy and the lack of emotional resources to be able to regulate yourself, breathe, be calm, expressing how you feel, but in a healthy manner, in a healthy communication. That doesn't happen in this type of household. And it increases the risk of abuse and domestic violence, and we heard a lot about that earlier. Also risks of neglect of duties to the children. And number 3, we have that the family strays further and further away from its primary functions. And those negative outcomes in society, we see violence, delinquency, mental disorders, such as, but definitely not limited to, substance abuse, suicide, depression, anxiety, personality disorders, attachment disorders, and the list can go on. So I'm just reminding us of what the functions of the family are. Now, you have 2 individuals or 1 individual in the household having to raise this family, and they're not able to meet their basic needs. If you are strapped for cash, you don't have a roof because Irma took it and it's 2022 and you still don't have one, you're not gonna be okay. If you are working 2 jobs, the oldest kid has to raise the youngest one. By the time you come home, it's been a long day. It's just time to maybe put them to bed or put yourself to bed, wake up the next day to do it all over again. It's a lot of emotional strain. And how are you then socializing your children? What time do you have to sit? Quality family time. How was your day? What's going on in school? How are you doing? How are you feeling? There's not enough resources in that household to be able to fulfill those duties. And so here are some strategies. I was so happy to hear the ministers say that they're interested and, they want this initiative to be taken off, because I think that we can do it. We can I love our people, that we're so competent and capable, only if we want to, though. And so, I have here that these strategies, meaning, as I said, as Roskam said, if the stress is too much and the resources are too little, that imbalance is going to break apart the family and by that the society. And so we have to have straightforward and accessible resources. I like to consider myself a little bit smart, right? And I practice patience on a daily. Sometimes dealing with certain procedures, my goodness, it's hard. And so I'm like, okay, if I having a hard time doing this, I can't imagine somebody who has even maybe 1% of my resources. How do they do it? And so these resources have to be straightforward and accessible. And on a micro level, that means within our own personal lives, we have to prioritize our health, our physical and mental health. Men, your families need you when you're 70. Please check your prostate. Please check your health. Women, we're socialized to do that every year, check our boobs every October. And so it's a little bit simpler for women to do it. And taking care of your health is anxiety inducing, because what if you get bad news, right? I don't want to know. Just let it take its course. Your family needs you. You deserve to be here for as long as you can. So the earlier you can check in on yourself, the better chances you give yourself. And our mental health, we want to talk a little bit more about that, because we're learning now really what mental health is, and in those subtle ways that it can start to show itself in our lives. We heard this about 6 times, I think I counted for the night, that a support system, that it takes a village. I did some research to try and see where it came from. Africa, of course, power to the people. And they couldn't pinpoint one specific village. I think they had about 4 different villages that had some variation of it takes a village. And we see it ring so true. Now, nobody ain't gonna talk to my child any kind of way. Let's get that clear. You gotta be healthy and correcting my child, but definitely we cannot do it alone. So ensuring that you have a support system to support you, to help you. And also that you don't know everything. Go by your auntie who know about money in banking. Maybe you might be interested in that. I just know about psychology, right? And the third component of what we can do for ourselves is to reduce the shame and stigma about needing support. If everybody can agree we can't do it alone, then we should be okay with hearing that we need help, or somebody coming to us asking for help, and keep the people business where they put it. People are afraid of therapy because of how much people talk. And therapy is a bound by confidentiality profession. It's that bad. So we have to, part of being a healthy, mentally healthy person is love, trust, loyalty, right? Like we have to be able, and if you know you can't keep it, say, don't tell me. My mouth runny, don't tell me. Be honest, okay? And on a macro level, ensuring that there is adequate housing, because again, that is one of the basic needs. If people don't have a safe place to live, we cannot tackle some of the bigger issues that they may have. And so housing, ensuring that they're not too gated and away from our reach, that what we do have within our accessible and straightforward reach is it's possible for all levels of society. Financial, wages, matching the cost of living, and also investment opportunities, land, houses, loans, being able to start a business and not be burdened by those taxes that they put on small businesses. You understand? And we're having a real conversation. I promise. I'm just here to talk. This conversation is so nuanced. We can never sit here and talk about everything that we need to. And I'm sure being a minister and having laws and all of that, it takes a lot. But as I said, if we want it, we can make it happen. We have enough people who know what they're talking about, being able to contribute to the solution. Healthcare, ensuring that physical, mental, as well as social. Social is our social workers, our foster homes, are up to par and up to standard to be able to meet the needs of the population. St. Martin has about 40 to 50,000 people. Research states 1 in 4 people are challenged by a mental illness. That rates it at 11,000 people on St. Martin. We have about, rough number, 50 mental health specialists, including school counselors, private, and mental health foundation. That puts about 200 people per specialist. quality of life, ensuring that our nature, our beaches, parks, flowers, trees, that we can see nature, our climate, that we're investing in green energy, because if we want the planet to stay here, we have to try and do our best to make it last. And as well as our laws, just ensuring that our people are protected and they feel represented. And so here I have a simple outline of the different roles that each individual may represent in their life. Number one, I have the individual. You are a man, you're a woman, you're non-binary. What do you do with your own life? Then you are a partner or a co-parent. Then you are a parent to your child. Sometimes families have their parents, their older relatives that they have to take care of in the household. So I just added that one in there for the diverse members of family. You're a professional, you go to work, or you're an entrepreneur, you have your own business goals. And so based on these, you need support on each level of those. And I left the other side blank because this is something you can use to see where you rank with your roles. Are you a parent first? Are you a spouse first? Are you a professional first? Are you an individual first? How would you rate these? If you're not a caretaker, then you can just leave that one out. And based on where you are, you'll have to decide if that works for your life. We often find that parents who don't have personal lives struggle in their parent lives because you are an individual first. Taking good care of yourselves makes you the best parent for your children or your child. It's okay to say, go. By your aunt, by your grandmother, by your godmother, my weekend is mine. It doesn't make you a bad parent to say that. It makes you an individual who needs some time alone, okay? Unless it's every weekend, and that's something different now, right? Your kids need weekends with you too, yeah, for sure. And so here's a small assessment that we can do. And if you identified with any of the symptoms of parental burnout, this may be helpful for you. Or even if you don't, this is always a good check-in that you can use for your life. What are your roles? So back the previous slide, what are the roles that you fulfill in your life? And does it satisfy you in the order in which they are? What are your needs? Are your needs being met? Yes or no? And if they are being met but not enough to your contentment, that's the next question. What are the resources that you can tap into to support those needs? We have Women's Desk, we have, I see so many little initiatives happening. I'm like, okay, maybe, things are getting better, but sometimes they don't come together. They're all over the place, and it's hard for people to really grasp onto where they're going. And you see, oh, it's tomorrow. I had something booked already for tomorrow. So based on your needs, it's up to you now to be creative and explorative to say, okay, I'm gonna go out there and see what's out there to help me. And that goes back to not being ashamed of doing that, because it doesn't make sense. You don't deserve to suffer in your life. It's best to ask for help and have better quality of life than to be ashamed and not have good quality of life. And on the scale of burnout, where would you say that you are? Are you sleeping? Are you feeling okay? Are you happy? Are you content? Are you irritable? Do you find that maybe the relationships in your household aren't as good? And so the left end of the scale is you're perfectly fine. In the middle is, okay, maybe there's some stress and I maybe do need some help. And then on the farther end, you're burnt out and it's chronic and you really do need to tap into your resources. And that's it for me. Yes? Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Hyman, for reminding us of the importance of looking within and the importance of mental health as well. We have 2 more speakers to go. So the next one is, we've had a husband and wife, and now we'll have a youth. Ms. Jamie Lynch, 17 years of age, is a current high school senior at the Learning Unlimited Preparatory School. She is also an experienced debater and avid contributor to the community. She serves as a panelist on multiple occasions, such as Roundtable Conference with UNICEF, and can also be credited with contributions to My New World project, which was aimed at developing solutions to problems youth throughout the Caribbean face as learning platforms shifted post-pandemic. Upon graduation, Jamie plans to pursue a college degree in civil engineering with a possible minor in urban and community studies at the University of Connecticut. At the age of 17, Jamie has found her passion for debate and public speaking and is striving to continuously refine her skills. Ms. Lynch.
Good evening, everybody. When I was younger, I always got grammar points taken off because I simply used the phrasing family are rather than family is. I referred to family as plural because I thought of a family as made up of many individuals. How can it ever be singular? However, a couple years later, and lots of grammar points later down the road, I see why it's singular. A family kind of functions like a pizza, separate slices functioning as one unit, a unit as complex as the individuals it's made up of. We constantly see the portrayals of families and what a family is supposed to look like in the media, and we tend to convince ourselves that there is a solid definition of family. We often frustrate ourselves comparing our family and our situation to this ideal. However, the definition of family is subjective. Family is consisted of people who give you the best and worst of themselves. Your family is there for your highest highs and your lowest lows. So sure, my family may not measure up to social media's definition. However, I think my family goes beyond that. My family consists of the neighbors I've known since I was a little kid, my grandma's friends who I have to hail every Sunday at church. My family consists of the people we give mangoes when our trees are overbearing, and my family consists of everyone giving parts of themselves to better me. At this young age, I cannot even attempt to offer the kind of expertise my co-panelists have offered. However, I can offer you a rendition of this poem by Maya Angelou titled The Human Family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse the light. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China, we weep on England's moors, and laugh and moan in Guinea and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways, we differ. In major, we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. I thank you.
This is the kind of hope you have in the future when you see young ladies like this. Let's give her another round of applause. So young and talented Jamie Lynch, remember that name, huh? And remember this evening. She's going places. Congratulations and thank you for your contribution. Now we're looking at the clock on the wall and we realize that, we are, yes, I know, but I have to set the stage so everyone understands. Looking at the clock on the wall and we realize that we should have been halfway and taking a break, but we have one more presenter, and when we're finished with him, then we'll decide if we're gonna break, if we're gonna do a Q&A. So let's get this final presenter, and we're looking forward to hearing from him. This is Dr. Henry Wallace Charles. Dr. Henry Wallace Charles is a mentor and motivational speaker, child rights researcher and advisor, lecturer, social protection advocate, social policy analyst, social justice youth development researcher, and practitioner. He is also an internationally recognized youth and policy development expert with over 30 years of practice. He is currently a senior program specialist, child resilience, with UNICEF in the Netherlands. He served as the lead consultant for the Caribbean Development Bank's first youth policy and operational strategy. He is a founding member of the St. Lucia National Youth Council and served as public relations officer and vice president respectively between 1985 and 1991. He is also a founding member and served as secretary-treasurer of the Caribbean Federation of Youth from 1987 through 1989. He is a member of the Department of Behavioral Sciences at the University of the West Indies, Child and Youth Research Cluster. He has also served as a member of the advisory board for the Caribbean Regional Youth Council. Dr. Charles is a former regional director of the Commonwealth Youth Program Caribbean Center, where he served from 2005 until 2011, as well as former interim director of the Youth Affairs Division of the Commonwealth Secretariat in London. He is the holder of a PhD in social policy from the Salis UWI St. Augustine campus. His thesis explored the social political context of youth policy and youth development stakeholders on youth and policy development strategy. At this time, I'd like to, and he's going to be addressing us virtually, and we thank him for making himself available. And as such, I'd like to present to you and introduce Dr. Henry Wallace Charles. Good evening, sir.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in fact, Mr. Moderator, I think the honor is really mine to have this opportunity to be among, although virtually, among such illustrious colleagues, such illustrious company this evening. Although I must admit that you all are a little brave in that where I am from, St. Lucia, and where I live, Trinidad and Tobago, this hour of the Friday evening is not an occasion for illustrious company, but still enjoyable company. But I'm honored, and it's an opportunity for me to share some with you. So in preparing for this session, of course, I came across a statement from UNICEF that was made in 2018, which says that the family is the fundamental social unit of all modern societies. I will share the slides so that you can have it thereafter. And that we learn to communicate, to empathize, to compromise within these small and vital social structures. And then fast forward a bit to former United Nations Secretary General at the height of the preparation of the SDGs, Ban Ki-moon, making the point that the very achievement of the development goals, that is the SDGs, depends on how well families are empowered to contribute to the achievement of these goals. Thus, policies focused on improving the well-being of families are certain to benefit from development. And so, between UNICEF's concept of, the family being this critical unit of modern day society, and Ban Ki-moon is saying that the family is critical in terms of us being able to achieve our sustainable development goals, I reflected and realized that, wait a minute, but there is a whole ocean, an ocean of variables, an ocean of myths, an ocean of facts, an ocean of half-truths, an ocean of assumptions surrounding family, what is family, the role of family in development. And so as I understood, my task was to put forward some points, some may be controversial, I don't know, as it relates to the development and the empowerment of the family so that they can become strategic partners in sustainable development. That is remember, this is the broad chapeau. My theme would be empowering the family as a strategic partner in sustainable development. A few things thoughts came to mind. I look at one aspect, which I would refer to as the philosophical aspect of that kind of conversation. Also, I looked at as well what I would refer to as the policy and the policy environment within which that conversation and that process of development should take place. And if the time permits, I will conclude to suggest perhaps 7 what I call strategic priorities of family development pillars. The question remains, and we must not run away from it. I have heard several concepts, several ideas brought out tonight. We cannot say any is wrong, any is misleading. But I believe as we continue to have that conversation about the family development, we need to continuously ask ourselves, what constitutes the family? When we talk about the family, are we talking like our colleagues earlier, the couple earlier? Are we talking about a nuclear family, single family? What constitutes a family? Okay, so there was perhaps a point in time when you start to identify families, you talk about nuclear, you talk about single parent, whatever. But there are some development spaces where they are children-led families. Circumstances have brought about situations. There are countries where things like HIV and AIDS ravaging societies, or violence or war, and children are really leading families in certain situations, right? You have situations in the Caribbean where crime and violence is so prevalent that you have a family basically sometimes being around and the elder sibling just managing a couple of smaller siblings, yeah? So that conversation, I'm not saying to abandon your perception of it, you work with it. But if we are talking about that broader, our society, and looking at family in the context of being part of the development agenda, we must always ask, when we say family, who are we talking about? Are we talking about a homogeneous group? Is it a heterogeneous group? What is it? Who are we talking about? Who are they? Is it just a nuclear concept? Are we just buying into just the idea of a nuclear family? Is it and nothing else? So these are the things. Do we always understand and appreciate how our family is coping? A speaker, just a couple speakers before me, raised issues about even just people's livelihoods and issues of affordability and take-home pay and all of those kind of things. Also raise issues about mental health and other things. Do we always, as development partners, as a society, always, even if we say we are working with families, do we always appreciate, do we take time to appreciate how our families coping? You know, how are they really coping? Or do we come with preconceived notions and ideas of what is really affecting families or what are their needs? And therefore, we factor these into the equation rather than us really having an authentic issue of that. And so this is where I say that as we start to look at this question, the policy, how are we going to get families to contribute to development, to be partners in development, not just passive participants, but active partners in development. I want to suggest, for instance, that we start to look at what are some of the philosophical approaches that actually underpinning our interventions, underpinning our assessments and our perception of family. Are we focused on what I refer to as a deficit perspective of family? We only see all of the challenges and all of the so-called maladies and incapacities, or are we looking at notwithstanding the challenges that families or members of family face? Are we trying to identify whether there are skills, competencies, what strengths that they have, that we can work with them, utilizing those strengths to help them address or to mitigate the risk and the other type of factors that they're going to face? Are we seeing families or members of families as persons who are actually rights holders, that they enjoy rights under the Declaration, the International Declaration of Human Rights, or that they enjoy rights under the Convention of the Rights of the Child? Are we just paying tokenism to those things, or are we seriously understanding that we need to look at the more rights-based approaches? One of the challenges of a philosophical concept that I find around the Caribbean a lot is that we have issue-based government agencies, issue-based ministries. And so, for instance, a Ministry of Health might go to a family, we identify certain maybe risk factors or certain priorities in health, and the health officer goes there. And then 2 days down the road, somebody from social development identify another set of challenges or issues, and the social development goes there. And so in the space of a week or a month, a family or persons within a family are bombarded with 5 or 6 different people coming at them with all different types of interventions. Perhaps we should consider the idea of looking at a more whole of government approach. If we are dealing with families, whether it's in a community setting, wherever, why not a whole of government approach? Why not having done the assessment of the community and the families and what are the priorities? Why not a government caravan, want of a better phrase, going in there and being able to deal with those families in a more holistic and a wholesome and respectful manner? Another gap I notice very often, and it may very well be the case in St. Martin and Caribbean, is we have what I call as this single view kind of issue, or unidimensional perspective of the individual, or say a group of individuals. So we may know them because they may be a group that have criminogenic tendencies, or they may be a group that has demonstrated that they may have mental health challenges. But is that the sum total of the individual or the family? And so that brings the concept. I know people, a lot of us in the Caribbean are still trying to grapple with it, but that brings the concept of intersectionality. When we look at an individual or a family, are we able to look at them in more than just that unidimensional way? What are the sum total of priorities? What are the sum total of needs? What are the sum total of issues? And are we able to create what I would call an intersectional picture of that family or members of that family? And therefore, our intervention is a more integrated rather than singular type of intervention. Of course, again, there are issues that are raised about the question of active participation. Are we supporting families to become active citizens? To be able to play a critical role in the development of the communities, in the spaces, whether it's in learning environments, whether it's in contributing to the development of the school or those areas. So we need to look at this. And I know not much there. On the question of policy and policy environments, of course, the United Nations has asked governments to support data collection research and do credible research on family issues. Okay? But as we do that research, as we try to identify what are those issues, is our focus on the manifestations of the problem, the consequences, or are we allowed the space as development partners? Do we self-censor, or are we allowed the space for us to interrogate and understand what are the structural inequalities in our societies that are contributing to issues like poverty and violence and breakdown in family? Or are we just looking at those manifestations and we trying to respond to them like firefighters? Or do we understand that there are deeper, more structural issues or factors in our society? Some of those factors have to do with the imbalance in power relationships in our societies, okay, that result in issues of privilege and issues of inequality that can result in families being caught in a cycle of poverty or a cycle of violence. So I would believe that we need to focus some on those things. Again, I think it's important, again, as we look at the family and we try to plan, we try to work with the family to, so to speak, to empower them in that context of sustainable development, that one cannot underestimate the issue of evidence-based, contextually relevant, and what I call fit-for-purpose policies, including parenting support policies. And I must stick a plug here to say that the government of St. Martin is working with UNICEF towards the development of a parenting support program. In fact, the consultants are on the ground and they're leaving tomorrow, but they're coming back again. Also, issues on early childhood development support. Again, the government of St. Martin is working with UNICEF. We just completed an assessment of the ECD sector, and it is about trying to support parents and others to better support early childhood development. Violence prevention or similar thing is happening. But the point is about evidence-based policies. Why am I emphasizing evidence-based policies? Because it's all over in the literature. But no, because often in development practice in our countries, we have what I call policy-based evidence. And Honorable Prime Minister, it is not a charge I'm laying against you, but I have come across situations where politicians on the campaign trail come up with they have a wonderful idea. They come into office and they want to implement the thing, okay? But what they want to do, they want to go out there and get evidence to support a policy. You know what I'm saying to you? I think we need to look at the end. We need to be genuine and go and interrogate what is happening to find the evidence to see if that makes sense. If we need to twitch it, how we can make it work. And at the end of the day, we all will be that much the better. I don't know how, as you all have many development workers around here, how would you describe the policy environment in St. Martin? In several countries, policy environments are lacking. We develop policies, but the policy environment, the political will, the resources, the institutional frameworks to be able to support, especially things like family-based policies and child development policies and youth policies are actually lacking. So having looked at some of those things, a bit of a mouthful, I'm proposing 7 strategic priorities that you may wish to consider, or say that guy talking nonsense here out of his head, for that will contribute to empowering families, really helping develop families, whether you're talking about nucleus, single parent, what kind of family you're talking about. Pillar one, I think we need to prioritize economic participation and empowerment. It's a real situation, not just unique to St. Martin. Families are hurting. The economic challenges, whether it is before COVID, after COVID, whatever, it's having a disastrous impact on families and members of families. So we need to prioritize economic participation, not just getting out employment, but somebody said it earlier, also about creating opportunities, putting out the the development strategies so that people can be wealth generators. That some of the young people that we have can become the new leaders, the new thinkers in the private sector and in private sector development in St. Martin. The second pillar is we need to focus on harnessing the social and intellectual capital of our family as a constituent body, but as also the individual members. We need to focus. Is education fit for purpose? Is education achieving that development goal? Are we just going for education and just producing a certificate meal? Or are we really preparing people to really impact and to take hold of the development? So we need to look at it. We need to look at what are the needs, but also what do an audit of our social intellectual capital, and to decide how are we going to harness it, how are we going to build it, but most importantly, how are we going to invest it in our development process. We need to facilitate that notion and concept of active participation and active citizenship among our families, within the family structure, assist parents to understand that the children and young people are to be supported in active participation. They need to be given the space and the opportunity to participate in decision-making processes. But as a society, we need to look at the family and look at units of the family and ensure that they are participating in decision-making processes. I know sometimes it is difficult because what active citizenship does is it seeks to balance the imbalance in power relationships. And if there are privileged groups controlling the power, they don't always want to give it up. So I understand those things. But, we just have to massage it and let people know we ain't trying to take nothing from them. We're just trying to create a more equitable society. Now, critically, most families, directly or indirectly, are usually impacted by issues of violence and issues of crime and all those things. Again, are we working with our parents, our families, children, young people, to be working with them not just as beneficiaries, but as collaborators and as leaders in helping create safe spaces, safe communities, and safe environments? So, like I said before, we are collaborating with the government, UNICEF, to do this school-based violence program with Professor Corinne Bailey has started the conversations, is coming in. Once we've done that work, the sustainability of it will not just be upon hardworking people like Chantal and Soraya and them. These people are up to their heads. It has to be grounded in the community. And therefore, we have a responsibility to work with families so that they too can be contributing to the creation of safe spaces and of course, coming from a previous speaker, the promoting holistic health and well-being. Not just the availability of health centers and hospitals, but a whole awareness around the issue of health, of well-being, of that. We need to help families in the non-communicable diseases are ravaging our families throughout the Caribbean. And I dare say, I don't think St. Martin is any different. Okay? I don't think it's any different, and we have to do that. There is always that notion when you talk about family as though it's an adversarial relationship between children and parents. And we say no. Part of this notion of empowering family to play a significant role in development is about fostering intergenerational partnerships. It's about helping young people understand how to be able to cope and work with the elders, the parents. And it's also about helping. Don't feel because you're the older person or you're a parent that you're not supposed to learn how to work and how to engage with your children. Because we do it wrong. As we create the barrier. So the whole idea of fostering intergenerational partnerships, and I could tell you that is one of the least known, but a major area of consideration by the United Nations. Okay? Because it's proven where work has gone into creating intergenerational partnerships, it has helped in reducing civil conflict and and misunderstanding in communities. And of course, everybody's talking about positive parenting. For this week, that was the big discussion, positive parenting, the people on the ground. But positive parenting cannot just be a policy or a positive parenting support program that comes out at the end of this year. We need to create an enabling environment for positive parenting. We cannot assume that the society understands and appreciates what positive parenting is and what is the value of positive parenting for the development of St. Martin. So we need to create that enabling environment, awareness, education, let our professionals understand what their role is as duty bearers. And there's a whole ecosystem that we have to develop towards creating that enabling environment. People, there's much more I can tell you, but I do not want to detain you any longer in this. Some people, like I say, Trinidad, standing by the bar, will call it this ungodly hour. So thank you and one love. One love. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Charles. Now you see why we left him to be the last, right? Okay. Let's give Dr. Charles another round of applause and thank him for his wealth of knowledge and experience and you being willing to share it with us on a Friday night. I know how the Trinidadians are, yeah. If he cannot tell his Trinidadian friends that he's doing this tonight, they would never believe him. Folks, there you've had it. A lot of information, a lot to digest. I don't know what terms to use to describe the panelists, but a brilliant group. Diverse and brilliant. Each with his or her own approach, but a wealth of knowledge and information was shared this evening.
Things don't happen by chance. I believe that. Things don't happen by chance. So I was sitting and I was wondering if I should say something, not in terms of a question, but sort of a comment towards what has been said tonight. I want to really thank this panel. The panelists has been excellent, and the information is a wealth of information. Dr. Charles said that we are busy with a positive parenting process. Actually, the consultants are on island. They're leaving tomorrow, Prime Minister. But we still want to continue with the virtual discussions. And I'm going to take this opportunity to ask some of these panelists to engage in those virtual discussions. Yes, I'm sure that, and I see Henry's shaking his head. He knows exactly. They are still looking at getting more information. They got quite a lot. But what we've heard today, I'm sure they will be happy to engage in some further discussions on strategies and of course, what you have highlighted tonight that would allow them the substance that is necessary to put into the assessments and then to go beyond that in developing, actually, they're going to be developing a parenting program that is specifically for St. Martin. And this is done with the University of the West Indies and also with a specific group from, I think it is Jamaica, that is dealing with very clearly the development of parenting programs within the region. So I'm going to put this out, and Prime Minister, I'm not stealing your panelists, but it's simply a matter of sharing. That's why we're here. So thank you very much. Yeah.
Great. I believe the panelists were so good that there are no questions. We have one more?
I think the panelists were really, really good, and I'm happy that we're able to have this kind of discussion tonight. What I was sitting and I'm listening, and it's a lot of information to consider, but something that always goes through my mind is the uniqueness of St. Martin. St. Martin is not like any other Caribbean island. And while we are speaking about the family and all this that is happening, I think one of the things that can be considered is the migration level that we have in St. Martin. Most persons come here and their families remain in other countries. I mean, I'm a pastor of a church, so anytime December come and holiday come, my church float. All right, so it reflects what is happening in St. Martin, and that is something I think needs consideration. Also, years ago, somebody said something to me from the media center. They say, we tell you what to think. And with what I'm seeing now, the level of expertise that we have, I think we are underutilizing our people in ensuring that the education process and the public awareness is heavily portrayed and conveyed in the society. A lot of things are happening within the media, social media, on the radios and so forth, but I think we need to start to put our experts to speak so that we can not just speak about what is damaging to the society, but we are able to train persons' mind to think differently. And I believe we can put back our family at the forefront. So my question would be, with all that is happening here now, would we begin to have that kind of public awareness campaign to bring back the understanding of the importance of the family being at the core of society?
Now, I don't know exactly I'm not sure who the question was directed to, but I'm going to call on the Prime Minister to respond to the question.
All in all, to get these people here took a lot. And so that's why I didn't want to postpone. And thank you, Jenny and Chantal, for pulling it off. To go to, you see when you have prepared words and you don't say them and you just go with the flow, and then you hear the things you intended to say still come out. The intention of this, I had an experience as Minister of Education in 2012, my first year, and I had a teachers' conference. And as government, you can have all the great ideas and want to implement them, but then you have to take the time to get buy-in. So for me, at that time, give teachers opportunity to say what's good, what's ugly, what's bad, and what should we do. And they took it and they ran with it, and policies were developed. And I always miss that buy-in. So being in general affairs, and everybody, no matter what goes wrong in any different ministry, they still come to the Prime Minister. So that's why I took the liberties to make use of I can't remember the abbreviation, but definitely family and women fall within Chantal's purview. And I know most of the panelists, and I wanted to make sure that the panel had professionals, had youth, had people who deal with the negative end. And initially when we were looking at parents, we're like, we have such a huge single parent family thing, and they're always on the panels. I said I want to bring a family or parent that was more what used to be the norm. So actually, you're not the norm anymore, I'm sorry to say. So to hear how they are maybe doing it, how are you in today, getting it done? So the intention is that this is not a one-off, that we hear and we recognize also when I see what is mentioned on social media, that people have no clue what is going on behind the scenes and how much work is being done to develop those policies. So we have to use the Department of Communications more. So they have to be at all these events. A lot is being said and not recorded, and that is being lost by the community. So the same way we could use social media for the mailing and negative news and pushing the fake news, I would like that the people know, yes, we may not be where we want to be, but I continue to make these statements about St. Martin can be a place where every citizen has an opportunity to be the best that they can be. And it cannot be just government alone. All of us have to buy into it and participate in it. So hearing this tonight, I got really excited and inspired after a really horrible week, I'm going to tell you. So we sometimes all in our different spaces can realize where even something that takes all of this to put together can be an inspiration to the person that hears it. So I'm happy for all who took their Good Friday evening when they could have been having happy hour or whatever else and be here. So yes, Pastor Nanton, there will be follow-ups, and I'm happy that Sharmina as SG of ECYS can see the potential of the information on this panel and bring it together. We do have a policy platform within government where all of the policy workers come together and they're creating an intranet so they can share information. So what I'm feeling now is that we have to educate the parents toevallig, who maybe need to be more involved in what's going on at the policy level. And we're seeing that, Jamie, what I wanted to hear from you is what does the youth think about family? And that's my question, if you would indulge me. For you, how do youth, your friends, you and your cousins, and anybody else that you're in contact with, as a youth representative, how do you see the family and what do you think based on what the good gentleman, Dr. Charles said? Do you agree? What do you think? I really wanted a conversation here today.
Okay, I mean, speaking for myself at least, I can say I see the family as trying because you can't expect a level of perfection because at the end of the day, family in itself is human. But I definitely can say my family is trying and I can see other families trying. So I kind of appreciate that in a sense. But then also you see it as, I mean, in a sense, that's who you learn from. Even if you don't want to, that's who you learn from. That's who your behaviors mimic. And then it's up to you if you want to mimic those particular behaviors. So I would say I would say trying and as a precedent, because they set the example in a sort of way. It's not necessarily a good example, but they set some example and you see, okay, is this what I want to do in my life or is this not? That's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know if Lord, let me go sit down. There are more questions and I hope it's for the panel.
Good evening. The panel discussion was amazing. I think everyone stood out to me. Ms. Rose, your presentation on child abuse was profound. I thought it was really, really well done.
Thank you.
My question is as it relates to avoidance attachment. I'm not sure, Ms. Rose, right? Yes. It's in relation to potentially maybe policy, but as it relates to maternity leave and how early does attachment avoidance starts? Because in St. Martin, I think maternity leave is quite limited compared to the rest of our European counterparts. So I was wondering if any research has been done into that and how we can improve that. That was my question.
You have a very loaded question. Well, indeed, avoidant attachment starts from the time you're born. If I were to take an infant who was just born and let that infant stay in a crib and cry, that avoidant attachment begins then. You'll also, if you look at it from a neurological point of view, you'll start to see certain developments that are naturally occurring in a baby that is held, in a baby that is kept warm and snuggled. You will already start to see the detachment in the brain. So it starts very early. That is the scientific part. I will say that maternity leave, indeed, we have in VSA done something better, but we ourselves recognize that we still have much to strive for. We have maternity leave right now at 12 weeks, which you still can take the 8 weeks before, but you do get it was 4 weeks before and 4 weeks after. It is now 12 weeks. So you can take 4 weeks before and then you take 8 after. And policy level, we do have discussions about how we can lengthen the period of maternity leave, but we are also having to weigh it with industry associations, weigh it with school boards. You know, it's a process, but it is not one that is done. It's not done for us. It is just that we will get there. We also have intentions about breastfeeding and how long that should happen. You know, we have best practices of 6 months. We have realities of 12 weeks maternity leave. We also have case studies in the world that show us, you know, children breastfed to 2 years old actually grow well, learn well. So we are striving. It is not a done deal for us. You're welcome.
I would like to I would like to tag on to that question because we've spoken about maternity leave, but we also spoke about the importance of having the father at home. So can you touch on the importance of paternity leave as well?
We have also increased the period of paternity leave. It went from 2 days, it's now to 2 weeks. And there are hopes that it will increase. It is an improvement. You know, the interesting thing too, I'd like to relay a study that I read the results of, and it was in the Scandinavian countries. The paternity leave is relatively really good, and then the dads go to the football games. So we do want that when we do paternity leave, when we do increase paternity leave, that we really have good communication campaigns attached to it. Now, I don't mind if they do go to the football games, but go with the baby bag, go with the baby, go with the formula, and, you know, share tips on how we can do this properly. So I don't mind, but it was interesting to read that, you know, in countries where the paternity leave is relatively really good, that the fathers was not using it correctly. So it's an eye-opener. We will run campaigns.
Great. There's only one more thing left for us to do tonight, and that's a summary of this evening's proceedings. So I'm going to ask Dr. Carter to just list some of the points that you heard tonight that the audience can take away with them. A lot was said, but just a few points that we can reflect and put everything into context.
Thank you for that. I want to say that in listening to all of the various panelists, very diverse and impactful, I think what came about is what happens when our vision of family changes. The definition of family has many different definitions, and it's evolving and changing around time. But we spoke about different disruptions, displacement through immigration, and these different refugee programs. Abuse, that's also a vision that is disrupted within the family. Mental health, when you're not well as parents, the mental disruption that causes. Going from a nuclear family to a single home family, and the impact that has on our vision of family as well. And then also leaving home, you know. So it's important for us to also think of how our vision changes of family, and how the definition of family changes as well when we're thinking of the policies that we want to implement. You know, I always believe that you need to speak to those who are affected the most when you are creating and making a decision. That's how I lead. That's how I manage. So just some key points that have been brought about. Family does not have to be blood related. Many people say that you can choose your friends, but not your family. Family can be seen as a dying institution that has no place in modern life. When governments are fighting with each other, the family suffers. What cultural norms have been used as excuses for loitering the levels of abuse in our children? A healthy family equates a healthy society. We always said that the family is the core. We are competent and capable people only when we want to. 1 in 4 persons on St. Martin has mental health challenges. So out of a population of 40 to 50,000, we have 1 mental health expert for 20 citizens. 200. You see, you guys were listening. Yeah, congrats. You guys are listening. There you go. Then we also have a few more points. So family as a fundamental social unit of modern day. And then also the whole concept of it takes a village to raise a child, and how this has changed over time, how technology has changed the dynamics, the family dynamics. We need to keep that in mind. And then, of course, parental burnout. So those are the major key points. And as the Prime Minister mentioned, this is an initial conversation and one that definitely has to continue. And I wished the Q&A was longer, because I think that is what we need. We need a discussion on how we can, yeah.
Yes, so we'll definitely have a part 2. Wait. Less presentations and more interaction, questions and answers. You were indicating something with Dr. Charles, or? No, you're okay. Part 2. So the public can expect a part 2 with a more interactive session. At this time, I'd like to thank all of the panelists, all 7 of them, and I'm going to call off each one if I can remember all the names. We had Miss Rose Pooran Fleming, young Jamie Lynch, Cassandra Richardson, Zoya Hyman, Mr. and Mrs. Romney, and of course, Dr. Charles. Let's give them all a round of applause and appreciation. Thank you very much. We'd also like to thank the department that put all of this together under the, of course, under the responsibility of the Prime Minister. And finally, thank you all that attended this evening. You sat, we were supposed to take a break. You were a very attentive audience, and your reward was a wealth of knowledge and information. And we hope to see you at the next event where you would have an opportunity to do more interacting in a more conversational tone. Thank you again for a lovely evening.